when we survey our members, for the very first time, and in some ways that little montage you just played reflects that, they are starting to say political insecurity, political uncertainty is the number one factor in determining what they do next.
I think they're in a really difficult position. And when you say, people do often say, we are where we are. Well, actually, the public don't believe that it's inevitable where we've got to. And I think there's really interesting polling today in the Times from YouGov that show, despite Jeremy Hunt and Rishi Sunak trying to talk about how the Russian invasion in Ukraine's led to this energy shock, there's still supply chain problems off the back of COVID. 45% of the public blame the Tories for the current state of the economy. Only 23% buy this line that we're part of this global slump. So I think that is really it chimes with, I think, what we hear among our own friends and families. It chimes with what a lot of Tory MPs tell me that they are hearing from constituents, a lot of anger. It's not going to be easy today for the Chancellor to sketch out much happy news. I think one of the really important things we'll be watching out for is what the OBR says about the state of the economy, recession, how long that might last, probably likely to be a huge downgrading of growth. And of course, we know we're lining up for £24 billion of tax rises and £30 billion of spending cuts over the next 5 years.
Are the tax rises going to come in quicker than the spending cuts?
Yes. So the spending cuts are largely, we believe, going to be placed for after the next election, in the hope that if there is any improvement in the economic conditions, some of those can be eased a bit before they come in. The tax rises, I think, are going to be pretty much immediate, and they are wide-ranging. We're expecting freezes to thresholds for income tax, VAT, pension savings. The additional tax rate's going to come down. So from people earning £150,000 and above being hit by that, it'll go down to £125,000. And council tax, as well, as we've spoken about in recent days, that the referendum lock is likely to be lifted, allowing local authorities to raise council tax by as much as 5% without a referendum. So that coming on top of the, price pressures for food bills, energy bills, mortgage premiums. It's going to be a really hard time, particularly for middle earners. I think what, in a sense, Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt have been smart and done the right thing and won over the One Nation caucus of their MPs in protecting the worst off households. We're expecting them to uprate benefits in line with inflation, to keep the pensions triple lock. They are soaking the rich with this measures to the additional rate of income tax. But it's the middle earners who are the bedrock of their voter base, let's not forget, that I think who are going to really feel the pain and probably punish them at the next election.
Yeah. Lucy, thank you for that. That's Lucy Fisher, at the Times Radio's chief political commentator.
We can also speak to Martin McTague, the National Chair at the Federation for Small Businesses. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning.
Main concerns for you then this morning? I mean, this has been a very, very well-trailed budget, so presumably you feel relatively confident about what's going to be in this statement. What are the concerns for small businesses then?
I think the major concerns are we're worried about what we call pre-tax profits. They're the kind, or pre-profit taxes rather. They're the kind of taxes that are applied to things like people and property. And they're really painful because they hurt businesses before they've even earned a penny of income. The other thing I think is worth saying is that when you look at the last two recessions, most of the jobs created, in fact, almost 80% of them, were created by small businesses as they came out of the recession. Now, if this government is serious about making sure that we recover from what is predicted to be the longest recession in many years, then they need the support of small businesses. And they're not going to do that if they start hammering them in the way that has been trailed over the last few days.
Is there worry here also that effectively they're so spooked by the markets for understandable reasons that they're obsessed with cutting spending and raising taxes? But the fear is that if we're in a recession, which is provoked often by inflation caused by external factors, if all their domestic measures are going to restrict the economy, they're in danger of actually making the medicine almost worse than the original illness.
I think you're right. I think there is so much about the way small businesses fuel the recovery in previous years. They're the ones who take the risks with their own income, with savings that they've managed to get from their families and put them into businesses that employ people at a time when most people would think that was extremely risky. Now, what you need is to encourage those people to do that. There is no way the bulk of small business owners will think that under the current circumstances they're prepared to invest. And the interesting thing is, when we survey our members, for the very first time, and in some ways that little montage you just played reflects that, they are starting to say political insecurity, political uncertainty is the number one factor in determining what they do next.
Do you think, and this is connected to that montage as well, do you think that the government might be a bit too scared of growth as a notion? They're too obsessed with the other side of the problem, which is balancing the books. Not that the books will ever be balanced. And for whatever, there are many, many, many flaws with the Truss approach that have been well documented. But the notion of growth being a priority, that does seem to have dropped down the agenda, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I heard an analogy the other day. In fact, it was a very senior minister in the government talking about the approach the government was taking was a bit like a sort of turnaround consultant in a company that's failing. Their first effort is to stem the bleeding. Now, the problem with taking that very sequential approach and saying, look, we have to raise taxes to try and stop what is a damaged economy, is that you are failing to invest in the most important things that will get us out of this mess. And I think they really need to have a much more balanced approach today.
Do you think they will? Just finally, how optimistic are you feeling this morning?
Well, it must be the most trailed budget, if that's what it is, in history. So I think I'm pretty much know most of the things that are there. Will there be a rabbit out of the hat? We certainly need one.